Well, welcome to the May meeting of the Seneca County Industrial Development Agency. I think our first order of business is we have two new members, Ben Guthrie and Ralph Lott. You'd like to take a few, minute or whatever to introduce yourself to the board?
So I'm Ben Guthrie. I've lived in Interlaken for the last 25 years, and I used to live over in Beloit, and I've lived in Lodi, so I'm on the south end of the county. I've had my own commercial refrigeration business for 30 years now, working a lot with the wineries and with supermarkets like the Old Big M and dairies like Tom's. And I'm glad to be on the board. I've dealt with a lot of businesses down in the south end of the county, and I like interfacing with businesses and how they are creating what they're building for the county.
I'm Ralph Lott, farm with my two sons south of Seneca Falls, 1414. I know most of you here, so glad to be back.
Glad to have you both.
Thank you. Unfortunately, also need to announce that Sue Sorencione has resigned from the board. So we were up to full strength and now we're down one. So it's just another one of these where very busy and I didn't think she'd be able to spend the appropriate amount of time.
At least we took 2 steps forward and only 1 step back.
2 forward, 1 back. So it's progress.
So we'll be reaching out to the interview committee that we had set up to appoint Ben and Ralph, and we'll be talking about the process for getting another person on board. But we do anticipate that might be a little bit slower than how we went about this, most recent time, now that we're not in such a danger anymore of not having a quorum. Really take our time and find some candidates and get somebody to fill that position. We'll keep you all posted.
Okay. So first item on the agenda is the approval of the IDA meeting minutes of March 24th. Everyone had received a copy of their minutes in their packet. Any corrections or additions to this? Hearing none, you have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Kelly?
Mr. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Brusso,
Yes.
Mr. Trout,
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie,
Yes.
Mr. Lott,
Yes.
Mr. Kime, Mr. Shibley.
Yes.
Mr. Kime, absent, motion carried.
Okay. Next is the financial statements. Again, everyone has received a copy of those in your packet. Nothing too much to really report. Looking at the first comparative balance sheet, there's not a lot of activity. We have a monthly decrease due to net loss in income. And the only other really notable item is the annual decrease in total assets between March 31st of last year and March 31st of this year of $1,030,949. A large part of that, $735,000, due to the transfer of the Route 414 sewer line, plus an industrial parts lot sale. And the rest just a drop in checking and savings of about $315,000. Looking at the income statement in the first 3 months of the year is almost completely zeros. Unfortunately, there's been no income from agency fees, no property sales or rental lease income. But on the upside, there's no unusual expenses, no really significant variance off the budget. And so we ended up with a loss of a little over $104,000 for the first quarter. we're, hopefully the projects that are in the works now should be coming up and we should be receiving that income. So,
Yeah, we're keeping an eye on those agency fees. But obviously, we are expecting well upwards of $1 million just from projects that were approved last year. So it's just a matter of getting those projects to closing.
Is there any update on Trelina?
Rob, I'll
Not
leave
for
that to
me. I
you.
have no update on it. I mean, it's essentially what I told you last month. So no, I haven't heard any more from their council.
Still a matter of them executing their lease options for the various properties that needs to be put in place before we can move forward with all of our legal documentation for the leasebacks.
It's a big one, correct?
And do we have a idea what we're gonna do with all that income once it comes in? We have a placeholder for it or?
As far as use,
Yeah,
well, I mean, our operating expenses,
right.
aside from that, obviously, we've been working on trying to get an industrial park site
Right.
acquired and moving forward. And although we do, anticipate applying for grants to help support that, it's unlikely that any project would be entirely grant funded. So some of it would need to come out of the IDA. And I think that, the case could be made that a portion of that money would be well spent on an industrial park for future growth. That answers your question.
yes, and one issue we do have is, as most of the income does come from agency fees. 1 year it can be low, the next
Right.
year high. So it's one of these where you just need to smooth out the income flow and hope for the best.
Mhm.
The other thing, just as a quick mention that we have been discussing a little bit, is the fact that with the projects, all the agency fees are due at the very end of the project, whereas most of our work and expense is done prior to the close. So whether it be appropriate to essentially charge part of the agency fees at certain milestones in the project, not leave everything to the very end.
And that was discussed actually as a topic at a professional conference that I attended recently. And the consensus was that virtually all the other IDAs also bill at closing. That's just how it's done. But if our organization decided that they wanted to change that and say bill our agency fees at time of final approval of final resolution, we could do so, but we would probably need to run that through the governance committee as an official policy that gets approved when we do our policies in the fall, so that it's, not seen as singling any company or project in particular out.
And then that would be the precedent.
And then that would,
You couldn't have a flexible policy where collect at the end or collect in the beginning or anything. What, it's either one or the other.
it would
It'd be tough if you got doing one way and another.
I just didn't know if some situations weren't being flexible like that.
No, and I think this is a phenomenon that we're seeing largely because of the different types of projects that we've started to get. So, really the first one that came to mind that we still haven't closed on is the home leasing housing project in Seneca Falls. And part of that is because they're getting funding and grants and support from all of these different state agencies, and that takes a long time to put together. So while our process was relatively quick, they weren't truly ready to move forward with construction at time of our final approval, which means that they don't want to close yet because they don't want to start wasting pilot benefits. So now that we're seeing some of these larger scale solar, like with Trelina, that's in some ways part of the issue is they've got a lot of legal things to take care of before we're ready to move towards closing. So these types of projects are a little bit more intensive, and for now it's going to require patience on our parts until we can have a formal policy that maybe says otherwise.
One of the things that would be helpful would be having some visibility into the pipeline, which is, I know, a challenge in some cases, but in other situations, we've looked at a pipeline as having, say, 10 projects there. Some are at 90% there to close, some are at 50% there to close, some are at 25% there to close. And then each one has a range of revenue associated with it. So we know how many quarters we may go without seeing any kind of agency fee revenue. Again, this is a challenging area because it involves a lot of confidentiality. But for us to see maybe some kind of percentage likelihood of close with an associated value at some point would be helpful.
We can try to get that information.
This is relative to your need of a cash flow, or it's just a philosophy on?
Well, the report, we went through a quarter with no revenue. So, okay, we know what's coming. We know what's coming. So it's going to be there.
Yeah, it's certainly not an immediate crisis or anything.
No, and
It's more.
that's part of why we do our long-term financial forecast for you all twice a year. Is the good news is we can go a few years.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't want to have
I
to.
think that from a practical standpoint, many things are done that way. I don't care if it's a project or construction project or financing project. Many of them are billed in stages. And I don't think there's anything wrong to say, hey, when we do these things, because you get into these, have the thing not work out and you have expenses in it and never get paid. You could basically say, hey, when we do these things, we want to see half the fee up front, the rest at the end. A third. You could set you don't make it too complex, but it wouldn't be inappropriate to say, hey, we won't take it all up front or, all at the end, but give us a portion of it at the time of commitment, or at the time that you start the project. And this thing is solid once you pay half the fee or a third of the fee and the rest of it at the end. You could even do it on smaller and bigger projects. You might say, hey, a small project, maybe they don't have the cash, maybe it isn't as big a thing, or it is a bigger thing for them. And, if it's under, $5,000 in fees, pay it at the end. It's not going to make that much difference in our cash flow or them. If it's a bigger project, they're doing a multi-million-dollar project, they certainly have the funding to pay a fee up front. And you could say for anything above some dollar amount, we want half of it with the project once it's committed and ready to go, and half at the end. So you can give that some thought just as a suggestion.
Yeah, so that'll be something for the governance committee to discuss going forward this year.
So any other questions, comments on the financial statements? Hearing none, could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Ellie?
Mr. Russo,
Yes.
Mr. Kime,
Yes.
Mr. Trout,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Shipley,
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie,
Yes.
Mr. Lot,
Yes.
motion carried.
Next item is the approval of amended 2021 audited financials and reposting to Paris.
So you all received in your packets a copy of a letter that was signed by Bob Kernan and myself to our auditor. What happened is that last year, Bonadent has a loan through our revolving loan fund. It was due to be paid out in full this spring with a balloon payment. They applied for an extension. And what that did is that triggered the loan being moved from a current asset to a long-term asset. And there was an error when the auditors came through and did the audit that it wasn't reflected properly in the statement. That change has since been made, and you received copies of the corrected pages. And Bob Kernan has gone through and reviewed the amended audit that they provided, but because there was an error and because there was a change that needed to be made, we wanted to bring it back to the board for reapproval and to reauthorize us to update the Paris posting accordingly. Bob, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think we had reconciliation of the changes which affected the statement and net position. And those changes occurred in the current asset positions as well as the non-current asset position. The overall number change was $101,918, changing current assets and non-current assets accordingly. There were no changes in total assets for the reporting period. It also affected the supplemental schedule number 1, which reflects the changes in the revolving loan totals. Again, adjustments were $101,918 for that area, along with the totals correcting totals for the same amount of adjustments. The other area change was the management discussion and analysis section of the report, where we show a change in the current position of the loans receivable. Again, that adjustment was for $101,918. If anyone needs to see that particular reconciliation, be happy to provide them to them. And I'm satisfied with the changes that they occur with the necessary board changes for the audit for 2021. Are there any questions? I think further discussion will need to be made at some point regarding this issue and the relationship we have with the auditor.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks. So any other comments? Hearing none, I have a motion to approve the amended audited financials so we can repost those to those.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Ellie?
Mr. Russo,
Yes.
Mr. Kine,
Yes.
Mr. Trout,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Shipley,
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie,
Yes.
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next item on the agenda is the resolution to transfer, well, another transfer of ownership from Del Lago now to Churchill Downs. And as you see in the briefing memo, that we need to approve the transfer to maintain the pilot program that we approved for the original project.
And there's no change or proposed change to that. We're just transferring it as is to.
Correct.
Yes.
And we've done this before when the Wilmots got out and everything was transferred to Peninsula Pacific Entertainment. So this is just one more transfer because our documents require us to approve any majority ownership changes. Are there questions? We do have Lance Young here from Del Lago if board members have anything they'd like to ask. Okay.
There weren't any conditions of our agreement that we anticipate being changed. As far as operating agreements, jobs, all that kind of stuff, there isn't any changes that we know of that our agreement was subject to and they were subject to that we're going to change.
There's been no request for that.
Has the transition happened yet? Is it in process? In process. Pending regulator approval, both, well, in all 3 states.
So everyone has a copy of the resolution in their packet. Any other questions or comments on this? Hearing none, I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Ellie?
Mr. Russo,
Yes.
Mr. Kine,
Yes.
Mr. Trout,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Shipley,
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie,
Yes.
Mr. Lot. Motion carried.
Next item is resolution to approve the sale of Beer Run lots 1 and 2 to Best Made Products.
So this is a follow-up resolution. For those of you that were on the board last summer, you will remember when we first received a purchase offer from Joe McHill, the owner of Best Made Products, there was discussion made and approval at that time to accept a purchase offer of $37,000 for both lots at the industrial park. And that was conditional on us having an appraisal done, doing the 90-day notice that is required to New York State before we sell any property, and to ensure that he got his site plans and everything in place for the property. So that has all happened, and Mr. McHale would like to begin development of the property this year. His goal is to break ground in the summer and to have construction finished, hopefully before the end of the year. And a copy of his site plans were included in the board packet for you all to look at. So this approval would be simply for us to move to closing on the sale of the property. This is not the same resolution that impacts the pilot or any other incentives. Are there questions about the property sale?
I have one question, just out of my own curiosity. Is there a reason that we wouldn't consider something like a ground lease for property at an IDA-owned or constructed park? And I guess where I'm going with that is worst case scenario, and I doubt there's ever been a case that has happened here in Seneca County, but if a business was to move, close, what would be they would sell that property at the IDA park to theoretically anybody they wanted to, and we would have, the IDA would have no control over that. Is there any thought in terms of what a con would be in something like a ground lease? I mean, because we're already apparent from this, we're already selling it under market value to some extent, right? As sort of an
Yes, although the price that we are selling it at is a price that was set precedent when Bob Aronson negotiated the sale to Jim Syke for the Finger Lakes Agronomics project. So
yeah, I'm not arguing that.
yeah, no, I know. I mean, I think it's a great question. I think it's something we could consider. There's obviously some risk to that in the sense that we could end up with a property that we would need to dispose of. I mean, I just maybe get a little bit scared because I still have PTSD from Hillside and the Army Depot. Obviously the industrial park ideally wouldn't ever quite amount to that.
Right. Because theoretically it would be in an industrial park, right? With all of the resources and the assets that are there. So I don't know that it would ever come to a hillside.
No,
probably
not. Yeah.
Just something to think about, especially as we're looking at a new industrial park potential.
I think it is an appropriate question, something to look at. Frankly, it would probably vary from deal to deal. Some places may not be willing to put that kind of money, depending on what the development is, into a property that they don't own. It would certainly have to be a very long-term lease.
Right.
Frankly, if there was any bank financing involved, they wouldn't prefer to have it be on lease property, but with a long enough term lease, they potentially would. It's done, and it isn't a wrong thing, and it's can be worked out legally. But probably every deal would be, how big a deal is it? Would the people want to invest that kind of money in the property and not own it? So I think it's a good thing to have a dialogue on, but it'd be hard to have, I think, a uniform. Everybody would agree to that.
I think it would more likely trigger a company wanting us to pay for the development of a building and then wanting to lease the entire property from us. I think, I don't know, but it's definitely something that can be considered in the future for projects. Other questions about the Best Made sale?
Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion.
A second? Kelly?
Mr. Russo,
Yes.
Mr. Kine,
Yes.
Mr. Trout,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Shipley,
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie,
Yes.
Mr. Lot,
Yes.
motion carried.
So the next item on the agenda is the second part of this, the actual inducement resolution.
Yep, so this is actually the final resolution to approve the incentive package for Best Made products. So this is for the pilot agreement, the sales tax exemption, and the mortgage recording tax exemption. They are also working on a loan application with us, but that will come to the board separately after our underwriters have had a chance to finish processing the loan and the loan committee has had a chance to meet and make a recommendation. So in terms of the proposed incentives, we did a public hearing for this project back in November of last year, received no comments on the project. The proposed pilot is a 10-year pilot modeled on the 485B real property tax law, where we estimate the total value of the property tax exemption to be just over $50,000 for that 10-year period. The sales tax exemption to be worth about $32,000, and the mortgage reporting tax exemption to be worth about $2,300. The project's expected to create 4 full-time jobs, or retain 4 full-time, and create 11. And the cost benefit analysis that we did back in the fall showed this project having $171 in benefit to the community for every $1 of public money invested. Are there questions related to the incentive package?
One question. So we have a strategic plan that looks at 3 areas of focus. One is tourism, one is agri-tech, and the other is advanced manufacturing. I wasn't part of the original kind of discussion with this guy. He came in, described what he was doing, seemed pretty promising to me. He's an owner-operator. He's grown his own business. He's an entrepreneur. He's got all the look and feel to me of the kind of thing that we would normally want to do. I mean, seemed like a good guy. Does this fall within that advanced manufacturing umbrella, or is this not that? Kind of in the middle. I mean, I think people, these are folks that we should.
The definition of advanced manufacturing is pretty
Yeah.
wishy-washy depending on who you talk to. I think there's some people that think super high-tech clean room type manufacturing. I would make the case that it's fairly advanced in the sense that he has a novel idea and that, you know, he is manufacturing it, but it's not probably what a traditional.
Yeah, it's not a
What would be-
cookie cutter business.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would question, actually, although ideally that's nice, I would question our ability to say all we want is advanced. If you get the definition down of manufacturing, we probably wouldn't do much.
No, I think if you look at the type of manufacturing we have in Seneca County as a whole, there really aren't many that would fit into that category.
Only point I'm making is if the strategic plan
Yeah,
says that's what
yeah.
we're seeking, we should, aim high. That's all. Good guy. No objection to this
Yep.
project at all.
We probably should take a look at that definition.
And then decide
define
whether
it
it's
a
still
little
the right one.
differently. Yeah.
Still, it's the right.
I think it's when the strategic plan was done, it's one of those easy buzzwords to put in. You know, every community wants advanced manufacturing, and that's, I think, more or less why it ended up in there, without really a thought to what can we realistically attract, here in Seneca County. Not saying that we couldn't.
I just look at it as a filter. When
Yeah.
a proposal comes in, that's the
Yep.
filter. Doesn't mean whatever that filter is, we can define it however we like.
Yeah.
But there should be a filter of some kind. I like this guy.
Sarah, you said that 4 retained jobs, 11 new ones. Where's he moving here from?
So he operated as an online business, so he did not have a physical company office. He has family and ties to Seneca County, but I think the official address prior to our project was Ontario County. And essentially what he's doing is now creating physical office, warehousing, manufacturing space, whereas before they dealt with, online sales and they contracted out their manufacturing. Other questions?
Hearing none, I have a motion to approve the resolution for best made products.
Second?
Kelly?
Mr. Russo,
Yes.
Mr. Kime,
Yes.
Mr. Trout,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Shipley,
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie,
Yes.
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next item on the agenda is discussion of a contract with Harry Sickerman and Company.
So the IGA has done business with Harry Sickerman and Company as the Harrison studio for quite a few years now, since before my time at the IDA. But we've never had to have a formal contract in place, largely because the work that they do is the loan application processing and underwriting for our revolving loan fund. And then they do also provide some technical assistance and support on our grant applications and things. But we've never had enough project flow through our loan program or through grants to really warrant needing a formal contract. Things are always done on sort of a case-by-case basis. But as we start to see our project pipeline increasing and we're seeing increased interest in the loans specifically, that has been triggering higher bills from us annually, which per the state reporting requirements necessitates us having a contract in place, because now we are close to annually approaching $5,000 or more in expense with this company. So this proposed contract is structured very much like the one that we do with Fisher Associates every year, where we approve up to $10,000 in expense. That does not mean that we would be spending that much, but it allows for some wiggle room, and it would just be based on project flow.
No change in what we're paying.
No, everything is the same. This is just putting it all in writing and formalizing it.
Makes sense.
The only question I would have is, it's a 3-year contract that gets reviewed every year.
We would review it and approve it every year. They wrote it as a 3-year so that didn't have to be done if we didn't want to, but we obviously update and approve our contracts annually. So we would do the same with
Yeah,
this.
just make sure I catch that aspect of it. We just need to make sure that that's cancelable by us. So it's a 3-year
It is.
contract, but we can cancel.
Yes, it's cancelable at any time, and Rob has reviewed this.
That would be what I was concerned about. So
Good.
Good question. Any other questions about this contract?
Hearing none, I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
What? Approve second?
Mr. Brusso?
Yes.
Mr. Kine?
Yes.
Mr. Trout?
yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie?
Yes.
Mr. Lot?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next item, Jeff, could you provide us with an update from the Seneca County Chamber of Commerce?
Certainly busy week, particularly this week. It is National Small Business Week, for those of you that did not know that, and also National Tourism Week. So we have a lot of weeks to celebrate here, a lot of things to celebrate here this week. On the chamber side, most of our programming the last couple of weeks, and particularly this week, has been about celebrating our business community, particularly because of National Small Business Week. We held a really informative session to kick off this week, and Sarah was a part of that. So thank you to Sarah for representing the IDA. Basically, what we did was we brought all of the statewide resources and federal resources that could be available to a business to help them grow and succeed. Mentorship, financial funding, all in one place. So the Small Business Association, the Empire State Development Office, Sarah was there from the IDA standpoint. Thought it was a really great conversation, led to a lot of insightful ideas for businesses to pursue, because we are getting that a lot at the Chamber of Commerce. So it was really a great session, and knowing those resources that are out there, I think, are really important for businesses to want to relocate or expand here in Seneca County. We welcomed several new members over the course of the last few weeks to the chamber, most recently being Love's Travel Port, which we opened the other day, that same day, actually. Family-run organization. Because they were the most recent one, I wanted to focus on them. Family-run organization that has moved here into Seneca County. David is the manager there. I would encourage everyone to say hello if you're ever in the neighborhood. But just to kind of reemphasize some of these members, nondescript members, if you will, nondescript businesses in our community. So you think of Love's, you think of a gas station, you think of some place that trucks pull off the thruway to fuel up, and then we never see them again. Love's has got a lot of things going on in that operation. One of them is a project that they're working on with local farms to turn waste into biofuels. And so, I mean, this is some of the stuff that's happening in our community and at some businesses like this that you would never have expected or never know. So that's why I just wanted the spotlight on the local business. Tourism wise, we relaunched our digital kiosk, our digital informational kiosk. You can go to Del Lago is one of the biggest examples of that. We have a full-size version at Del Lago. It's a system that's tied into our chamber, our tourism database, as well as the state database. So a lot of resources at the fingertips available through this digital presence. And then I'll finish on One Seneca. We continue to meet every Thursday. Sarah is a part of that and the representative for an IDA presence. But all of you are welcome for sure. We continue to meet every Thursday. There's a couple initiatives that One Seneca is focused on, one being broadband, helping push that initiative over the hurdle here in Seneca County, as well as economic development efforts. That's really what that group is meant to do, is spur economic development. And I just wanted to touch on one item that we shared today. We were talking a little bit about, not so much that we have to go out and create chickpeas, Ralph. We have a agricultural presence now on the board. But we talked about a economic development effort that was originated in Schuyler County, to working with some of the companies in the area and a farm to have an experimental program to see if we can create chickpeas, because apparently there is a chickpea shortage in the United States. For a hummus company, that's a really important deal, right? And so that's the company that they are working with is a manufacturer of a hummus product, and they are looking to see if they can create in the Finger Lakes here in Schuyler County a growing ability for chickpeas. And so I say that not to say, Ralph, start making chickpeas. I just say that to say I would challenge all of us on the IDA to help Sarah and her team and her staff in terms of coming up with some of this, visionary work, kind of going back to your thought, Bruce, in terms of what is that next opportunity for us to be thinking about and bring that forward so we can have a discussion here and then possibly add that to our strategic plan. So just a really interesting discussion, I think.
Where are chickpeas grown now?
Well, they are not grown in the Northeast. They are grown primarily outside the Northeast, but apparently there is this article shared that Lancaster, Pennsylvania had a successful model. So that's not too far away. And so that's why they think there could be a market there could be the ability in the Finger Lakes area to grow this. But knowing that there is a shortage of them out in the marketplace and knowing that there is a market for that, I wouldn't put it past our farmers to be able to find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Does this fall into agri-tech?
I would think so.
I
Yeah,
see.
I would think so.
I believe most of the chickpeas are grown in the Dakotas, Montana. They're sort of an arid. They like dry weather. I'm not sure, but it's worth a try here. We were contacted by somebody. No, we want to grow some. So.
Just an interesting, bringing it back to agricultural. What are some of the things?
They probably love our clay then.
They could be.
They should be some big peas.
Summertime. So.
Yeah.
Soak up all that water.
That's all I had to say.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Don, any update from the Seneca County Board of Supervisors?
Yeah, we're going to spend a lot of money this year. I guess we'll start with the Sampson's Veteran Cemetery. Mitch, you can chime in anytime if I mess one of these figures up, but we're going to spend about $860,000 to demolish the old mill that's out there and then make room. There's a big plan set up to put a bunch of niches in, and those are there's going to be about 3,600 of them in a small park, and that is a place to put cremated remains. And you put the little model there and then walk through the park. It was the first time I was introduced to the term at our last board meeting. Is there a lot more to add to that? Okay. That'll be coming up this year. Let's see. The state has finally awarded or at least put out there how much money they're going to give us for our sewer districts and what they're going to be putting into districts 1 and 2 as far as hillside plant being demolished, all that good stuff, and then got down to Willard. I know that the supervisor in Romulus has been dealing with the state as far as closing Willard and what kind of money they're going to be putting into that water plant. All of it seems to have a plan. All of it seems to have money. Whatever the state doesn't have, we have ARPA funds. So we'll be putting that into the sewer districts along with maybe creating a couple other sewer lines in some other districts down in the south end of the county. So a lot of development as far as infrastructure goes and a lot of fixing as far as the old infrastructure. So hopefully many of our problems that have persisted over the last 8 to 10 years will be fixed. I would say right now, I think the state's awarded about 8 or 9 million down at the south end. And then, we have plenty of ARPA money. We just have to make a decision on what we intend on doing with it. If you've been through downtown Waterloo, you'll see we're fixing the cupola on top of our Seneca County office building, which is good. We put a lot of money into the district attorney's office years ago. That was getting dilapidated. It was looking pretty scrummy. The scaffolding's all up and it looks like they're going to do a bang up job down there. So, as far as the cherry on top of, the pie, it needed to be fixed. It needed to be taken care of, and it's getting the attention it needed now. As far as anything else goes, you think of anything big, Mitch? Okay. Yeah. That's probably going to be enough for us, for our group for the year anyway, Kind of funny to think after another month, the year will be half over.
Okay. Well, thanks, Pat.
Yep.
Under other business, Sarah, there's a few items.
Yeah, so obviously we are notably missing somebody here that has been in these meetings for a long time. Pat Jones retired officially just last week. So we are already missing her around the office, but we have already begun actively advertising the role for her replacement, which we are calling a grants and development specialist. So that job posting is on our website. If any of you think of somebody that may be interested or may know of somebody that may be interested, please send them there. We are also advertising in the Finger Lakes Times and the Democrat and Chronicle. And then we are advertising online with Indeed and ZipRecruiter. So we've received a few applications already. Our applications are open until May 20th, and then we'll begin going through and selecting candidates to interview. Our goal would be ideally to have interviews conducted and to come to the board with a candidate for appointment at our July meeting, most likely. Provided all goes well. Are there questions regarding that?
Pat going to reapply for her own job. She may come back.
She joked before she left that, you never know, but I don't think so. She's, I'm sure, enjoying her retirement, although we know how to get a hold of her if we have questions.
Right.
So
What's the salary range?
salary range is 50 to 60,000
Okay.
with, full benefits, New York State retirement and all that. All right, that's the only other business I
That's
have.
it. We do have an executive session here. So I request a motion to enter into executive session for discussion on the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property where publicity could substantially affect the value thereof.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So we're in executive session, need to confirm we're out.